This week we're going to talk about using more editing tools. We're going to use just the timeline for editing today. Upload the 5 clips that you shot on your cell phone, and the last module told you how to do that. I'm just going to use ocean, pelican, and seals from last week to show you these new tools. I'm going to bring over one of the clips to the timeline. So as I grab this over and place it, the first thing it asks me is, do I want to change the sequence setting? Yes, I do. As you see here, the size of the window is standard def. It's pretty small. So I'm going to say change sequence settings, and about 99% of the time, that's what you want to do on a new timeline. You want the clip to match the sequence setting. And I showed you last week, if I scroll over here, I could see the size of the clip. This clip is 640 by 360, and now the size of the window is 640 by 360. So if I play this, there's my first clip. Now last week I had you double click the seals up to the source window and edit from here, but we're not going to do that. We're going to use the trim tool. So if you see my cursor here, as I move it over the timeline, it changes icons. So now we have this little arrow that's pointing to the left, and here I have an arrow that's pointing to the right. So I'm creating a smaller clip by trimming it. So that's another way to edit. Now I'm going to hit the plus key so that I could zoom into my timeline. And in fact, I trimmed the front, and I don't want all this blank space in the front. So I'm going to click on it and hit the delete key. And now that pulls the clip over to the beginning of the timeline. So let's see what we have here. Okay, so it zooms out a little, and let's say I want it to stop there. So I could either trim that to that location where my cursor is, or the other tool we're going to look at is the razor blade. So if I count down on my tools, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth one is the razor blade. So if I click on that, now my icon looks like a little razor blade as I hold it over the timeline. So if I click here, right where I want to cut it, then I go back to my arrow, my select tool, and I click the end of it and I hit delete. So there's 2 different ways to edit that we've just learned. How to trim using the little trim icon, and how to cut and delete using the razor blade. Okay, so now we have a shorter clip. Okay, let's say I want to just stop there. I could cut it again and delete it, or I could just trim it back, and now it's shorter. Now, as we know from last week, non-destructible means that my original clip isn't this short. It's not just 2 seconds and 26 frames. It is as long as the original clip was. But in my timeline now, I've edited it down to a 2-second, 26 frame clip. Okay, let's try the next one. Here's Pelican. And instead of double clicking up into the source window, I'm going to bring it over to the timeline and drop it. And notice that as I dropped it, it automatically clicked to the last edit. That's because my snap is on. So that's always very useful when you're doing simple editing. Okay, let's go to that point where he starts to turn the head. I'm going to trim it in, and he kind of holds his head there, so I'm going to trim out there. Okay, so I have a much smaller clip now, and I want to close up the gap. So again, I click on the gap and I hit delete. So I'm deleting the space in the middle. Okay, here's my edit, and just like that. Okay, so go ahead and do that with the next probably 3 clips that you have left. So again, using either trim or trim and using the razor blade.